hoc explanations. That's my thoughts on that, though. Matt, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, first of all, where are all the dead bodies if they existed for such a long period of time? We're talking 2 million years of human beings existing on the planet, and they're not there. And then what do we have? We have the sapient paradox, where supposedly human beings lived in Africa for 200,000 years, and then only in the last 5,000 did they actually do anything whatsoever. That's a paradox. And then we have what is this? Lewontin's paradox, right? What's the genetic diversity of the consensus population size? That's another paradox that evolution has that it can't solve. The population paradox. Populations expand. Where were humans expanding in Africa? There are 150 years of population size that looks. This has long been a paradox with no obvious solution. Then we have the phenotypic diversity paradox. Why isn't there a nested hierarchy from humans that have been living in Africa in the most diverse region on Earth? There's no phenotypic hierarchy. It's exactly what we would see if Noah's Ark was true. The phenotypic diversity between all the different people groups matches equal. It's identical between every people group. That's exactly what we would expect if the biblical model was true. So
fossils really show that creatures gradually evolved from simple to complex? The late fossil expert and evolution defender Stephen Gould recognized they didn't. He said the fossil record shows two clear features: one, sudden appearance, and two, stasis. When a new creature is discovered in the fossil record, it shows up suddenly and fully formed, with no gradual forms that led up to it. That's sudden appearance. Then its basic form stays the same. It doesn't evolve, and that's stasis. All kinds of fossilized creatures show sudden appearance and stasis, including creatures like crinoids, mosasaurs, beardworms, horseshoe crabs, lobsters, and trilobites. Rather than gradual evolution, the fossil record shows each animal form suddenly appears. Trilobites have perfectly formed body parts right from the start. They show were true, the fossil record should show one type of animal life in the lowest layers, then two, then four, and so on. But Darwin himself had a difficult time explaining what we now call the Cambrian explosion of life. Cambrian rock layers contain nearly all the basic animal forms, including echinoderms, arthropods, and even chordates, with no trace of transitional fossils in lower Precambrian rocks. And each fossil exhibits amazing complexity. For example, Cambrian arthropods had advanced compound eyes, like we see today in dragonflies and bees. The eyes were tuned to the way light travels through water, allowing the creature to see straight. This required each eye to have over 3,000 interconnected lenses. Compare that to only one lens in each human eye. Cambrian rocks also contain fossil fish that look like today's lanceolids and hagfish. The fish had perfectly crafted skeletal supports inside their bodies, an opposite arrangement from Cambrian arthropods like trilobites. The Cambrian layers show an amazing amount of diversity and complexity. Evolutionists claim it happened in a mere 5 to 10 million years, the equivalent to a blink of an eye in so-called geologic time. Sudden appearance? Instant complexity? That doesn't sound much like evolution. Instead, the fossil record shows fully formed creature groups right from the start.
Carbon-14 in dinosaur bones? How can that be when we're told they're millions of years old?
Well, it's a good question because carbon-14 only sticks around for a few tens of thousands of years. So dinosaur bones, we're told, are millions of years old, so there couldn't possibly be carbon-14 in them. And yet routinely it's found to be in dinosaur bones. Now the Bible tells us that all the dinosaurs would have been wiped out in Noah's flood about 4,500 years ago, apart from the pair of each kind that would have been on board the ark. So finding carbon-14 in dinosaur bones is no real surprise for the biblical Christian, because it's
What did you find then when you were looking at the sample and you actually found some tissue?
Okay, here's what we found. Here we have a piece of the horn that has been decalcified. like what I just showed you over on the bench. Mark Armitage was our microscopist working on this, and Mark then took a piece of the decalcified horn and put it under a microscope. See the fibrous material there? That's part of the composition of the bone matrix itself. But what's really of interest is see the white material here on the surface swaying back and forth? That's actual dinosaur tissue on the surface.
Maybe the biggest scientific news you will hear in your lifetime. And this news is that widespread fraud has been uncovered and documented in the field of human evolution. And when I say the word fraud, that means the scientist knew he was deceiving. It wasn't just a mistake. Now, we have documented 45,000 mistaken stone tools and bone tools. That's not what I'm talking about. And we've documented 232 overturned ape men. Those were mistakes. And we've documented scientists putting bones in the wrong positions. Those were mistakes. That's not what I'm talking about tonight. I'm talking about a scientist knowingly
How should you see these diagrams in museums and textbooks that life has supposedly developed from the first chemicals that produced the first cell that diverged through time over millions of years, branching into all different organisms that we see today? I'm going to shock you by first of all telling you that the rock layers are real. If you don't believe me, when you leave the museum, pull over on the 275 out here in a road cut and bang your head on the rocks. They're real. Now, the other interesting thing is the local rock sequences generally follow the order that's depicted in the geologic column. And so the layers here in Cincinnati, you can compare with layers in other parts of the world, in exactly the same section of the geologic column. It seems to fit. And the other interesting thing is the fossils contained in the rock sequences generally follow the order of the fossil record. The caveat is, in those diagrams, they don't show you all the fossils that are found in the rock layers. They choose the ones that tell the supposed story of evolutionary development. So the layers are real and the sequence is real. What about the fossils we find in this sequence? Well, we have trilobites and clams and sponges and echinoderms and gastropods or snails. And as we go up through the sequence of the Grand Canyon rock layers, we've only got marine fossils. Now, as we go northwards up the Grand Staircase, what do we find? We start to get not only clams, but we start to get terrestrial animals. They're bones. And we're getting a mixture of fresh and water and marine creatures, which you'd expect as the flood came up onto the land, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But we increasingly get land fossils as the waters cover the land. If you look
miraculously creating the world and everything in it in just 6 days about 6,000 years ago. But the theory of evolution has a much different timescale, taking millions of years to go from goo to me and you by way of the zoo. Which view is correct? Well, to be honest, both views require faith because no one was there thousands or millions of years ago to observe how it all got started. But can the idea of millions of years of evolution be scientifically validated? Can we really prove this idea of deep time using the same observational science we use for making medicine and putting people on the moon? Validation is the process of confirming what is believed to be true by what can be observed to be true. Has this ever been done for radiometric dating, the process that gives us the very idea of long ages? Actually, long ages and radiometric dating hasn't stood up to the validation test. Radiometric dating has never been validated against the absolute known ages of rocks. Let us explain. Consider Mount St. Helens. This volcano erupted in the 1980s, giving scientists the opportunity to date the rocks that were formed from the eruption. The results? 5 different ages, all between 350,000 and 2.8 million years old, for rocks that we know were less than 30 years old. This discrepancy happens all the time in radiometric dating studies. In fact, there has never been a radiometric dating analysis that simply produces ages that validate to the known ages of rocks. And if radiometric dating doesn't work for rocks of known ages, why do we trust it for rocks of unknown ages? So the next time you hear millions of years ago this happened or that, just ask, how do you know that for sure? And if radiometric dating is the answer given, just ask, are you aware of a study where the radiometric age of a rock agreed with the known age of the rock? And you'll find the answer will undoubtedly be no. God wrote with his own hand that he created the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them in just 6 ordinary days. The genealogies in Genesis lead us straight back to Adam, just about 6,000 years ago. Have you ever noticed how hard the world pushes the idea of millions of years? Books, movies, museums, schools, it's everywhere. But does any of this even matter? Well, consider this. Many people will only consider the Bible's message if they believe the Bible to be credible, both historically and scientifically. Each person's eternity, either in heaven or hell, depends on what they believe about the risen Christ. And how do we know about this? Well, it's in the Bible. And if people don't believe the Bible got it right on the first page, who's going to trust the rest? So, because it takes faith to believe in either the Bible or the world's view of this distant past, is it a better choice to trust God or a fallible man?
Did you know that it doesn't take millions of years to get fixed sequences of sedimentary rocks? Hundreds of feet thick of conglomerates and sandstones and mudstones, for example, were deposited in just a few weeks when 2 large lakes burst